This week, I want to introduce my friend Marc Hoffman. Marc, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Heather.
I actually brought Marc on after having a conversation with him regarding stress management. And so if you want to give a little background about kind of where you used to be in the corporate world and kind of where you're at today.
Yeah, so I've been in the professional realm for about 8 years, or so, and the first five were pretty smooth sailing. Worked in media and in kind of the advertising marketing side of things, and got promotions, added responsibility, kind of pay raises. Everything was kind of going, according to plan. It was kind of what you envision, kind of leaving college and choosing a career. And then and then one day that kind of changed, and so these last 2.5 years have been interesting and not according to plan, but a lot of positives out of it as well.
And so what you kind of shared with me is that not according to plan, which some refer to as a life blueprint. So I'm 32 years old. I did not picture myself to be where I'm at today, but I wouldn't take any of it back. And so can you maybe dive more into that life blueprint, or where you thought you would be today, climbing that corporate ladder? What changed that you got out of that corporate environment, and what are you doing with your life now?
Yeah, so a lot of my personality identity, among other things, kind of came from a life of playing sports, and with winning kind of being the goal, and that kind of shaped my approach to my professional career. And when it became my path, that was not according to plan, started when I had my first real kind of negative experience in the workplace of having my superior, my boss, not be a personal fan of mine. And it was an unusual position to be in, and I really internalized it, because I took what she told me at face value, just as I had with all previous bosses. And her critical feedback I took as being a reflection of my performance, of my contributions, and the position I had. And it it was really devastating. It was the first time I was really given such negative feedback, over my contributions to something.
Did you feel rejected? What were your feelings?
A little bit. I mean, honestly, the prevailing feeling was, it was a new position I was in. I transferred within the same company I'd worked for since I left, graduated from college, except I went from working for the company in Des Moines, Iowa, which is a city, but compared to Denver, where I was in this new position, Denver's obviously a much larger city. So there's a lot of that, kind of like small town doubt, the the small town kid, can't cut it in the big city. And so I thought, because I had the sustained success, that warranted me moving into this position in Denver. And all of a sudden I was, receiving feedback that, really made me feel like, oh, Denver's just too big of a city. My success in Des Moines is because it was, a small town, and, the stakes weren't as high. And it just really made me call into question the last 4 years of my professional, experience that I'd built up. And when those 4 years are the only 4 years you have, that's kind of devastating to think that what you thought you were building this whole time was actually completely worthless and meaningless and meant nothing, anymore.
So what happened when you hit your lowest point at that job with the boss that didn't like you? I mean, what was your low?
Yeah. So the low is what I just described. I mean, and just, thinking that day to day, showing up to work and just really feeling like, wow, my, my skills are inadequate. They are, ineffective. And, it got so bad that I started having like heartburn issues. Like acid reflux, I saw a doctor about it. And she even prescribed me medication, but it was because I do have acid reflux. And she had mentioned that the doctor did that, that stress can contribute to it. But I also eat spicy and acidic food. So long story short, that kind of stuck with me. And the turning point was, so that was the low, and that spanned for probably at least a month. But it turned around when my performance started improving, like objectively improving, and what the benchmarks she set out for me, I was starting to hit, and her tone didn't change, her feedback didn't change, and I, having the background in sports, I mean, I'm used to kind of the tough love, rough around the edges, kind of coach, who doesn't smile, doesn't want to let that they're secretly proud, and this wasn't that. And it resulted in this epiphany of, it's actually not my performance, like it's me, that she doesn't like. And from that point on, it really led to a foundational shift in, how I view myself, and kind of, what factors I take into when establishing kind of, my self-worth. And it was a shift more towards, kind of intrinsic value rather than, having it hang on the words of my supervisors at work.
So in summary, would you say that you learned not to take things personally?
Yeah, a little bit. And, there's definitely that. And also, I just, being in my, early mid 20s and being surrounded by and being under the direction of people, that have decades of experience, I wanted to be respectful and assume that, their critical feedback, wasn't for such, petty reasons, and to this day, and for many, many years in the future, I don't see myself as, kind of a finished product. I like to learn. I like to improve. I like to do things better. And so I really, I really cared what they had to say, whether or not, I even agreed with it in the moment, but I wanted to hear what they said. And it really, it kind of created a filter, from that point on of, still wanting that feedback, but just not letting myself take it at face value, of kind of setting personal benchmarks, especially being in the same line of work, for my whole professional career, of kind of, really knowing whether or not they tell me of what is good, what am I trying to achieve to be successful, in my current position, at my job, and knowing that that's probably a more meaningful, north star to follow than, critical feedback of of a boss on the given day.
Something you shared with me is that your takeaway from the last 2 years is to not sweat the small stuff. What does that mean to you?
I mean, really just, have your priorities set. I, I can be a bit competitive at times. I gamify, a lot of things in life, just because I've always kind of been in that athletic keep score setting, and at work, and even away from work. I mean, I've dramatically kind of changed my approach of, does this meaningless volleyball game, really count to where I'm going to get on the case of some very fine people who I do not know, or are we all there to kind of, get some exercise in under the nice blue skies of Denver, maybe have an adult beverage and enjoy each other's company? So, really, in a way, like, care less, but then I'd also say, like, I've never cared about, like, life more at the same time, but it's just having, like, having those priorities of, a version of the work smarter, not harder, type deal of, have that passion, have that drive. But, if you spread yourself too thin because you're trying to have that 110% effort in every single little thing you do, and you don't let yourself lose an argument, you don't let yourself, take the occasional L when, you've been bested or an unexpected circumstance comes up, like, that is exhausting, and it, and it will show. So really just, picking my battles, trying to maintain control of what I have control over, but also acknowledging, the parts of life that I don't have control over, and just doing the best I can to navigate them, to roll with the punches, and just to make the most of it, even when the outcome isn't ideal.
I love when you can take sports metaphors like that into a real life, because I'm the same way, and I didn't grow up heavily in sports. Like, I played a little bit here and there, but I think having an older brother, and I was always competing I wanted better grades, and I wanted to be smarter, and I've always been such a competitive person. So I remember I used to play in a work kickball league, and I would get so frustrated and pissed off if we lost. And then at the same time, like, I'm supposed to be there having a good time with coworkers. It's just for fun, but it's so hard to take that competitive mentality of wanting to win, but wanting to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was even talking about this, with some friends the other day of, when in previous years when it was, hey, always be winning, and I'd have friends who got it already. I was very late to the party of like, hey, not everything, matters that much, especially with, adult rec league sports. And, and they're like, hey, we're just here to have fun. And my response 100 times out of 100 was always winning's fun. Yes. So like no one enjoys losing.
Yeah, I think it's creating that balance, right? You're not going to win at everything, but I think when you do lose, whether it's in a sporting event or work or whatever it may be, and how do you overcome that mental failure status,
Yeah, I mean, the analogies and metaphors are endless, and that all, really boil down to, if you go hard all the time, you will break down. Like, you will get exhausted. You will be spread too thin. I think there's a lot of potential in each and every person, but if if you blindly throw that passion and energy behind every single little thing, you're going to have none left when maybe it matters most, and so that's, that's why I try to be cognizant of what is the impact of something, what am I hoping to get out of it? And, and in terms of, keeping score on things, if I do not care at the end, what the score is, then, not, and I'll still compete, because I still think winning's more fun than losing, but I understand that, the people I'm sharing the playing field with or sharing a dinner table with, aren't as invested. And I really, am much more, willing and wanting to kind of, just come back to, to their level of the lowest common denominator, if you will, of just like, okay, meet everyone, kind of like where they're coming from. Empathy.
Yes. I also, can you please touch on something you shared with me, that your quality of life, you are the you kind of noted that you are the happiest you've ever been, but why?
Yeah. So, and I would say, for added context, I've out of the last, really 2 years, I've had full-time employment for only 7 of those months. And, uh, and versus how, the first kind of, 5 years of my professional career went, I would have never guessed, unless it was some form of awesome early retirement because I did so well. I never would have guessed that, there'd be a year and a half span out of 2 years, where, essentially I was just kind of doing part-time work, if any work, and not being able to get, interviews no matter how many jobs I applied to. So that was kind of an experience of failure, that that also went together with, the toxic work environment, kind of setbacks to again, like, just, I don't have control over, who companies kind of pick out of a large stack of applications and whether or not my name comes up. Um, but through it all, even though there's been plenty of times where I'm not quite sure how I'm going to pay the bills, where, the savings I was, able to accrue when I had steady employment is, hemorrhaging and slowly dwindling. And yet I look back and I think, like, on a whole, it is like, it probably is the best quality of life I have. And as I told you in our talk, maybe happiness is too strong of a word. I mean, if things came a little easier for me, I think I'd be just, that much more happy. But at the same time, the quality of life where I think my overall health is, you know, how I view, kind of myself, both as a person and just being alone, with myself, I'm very content with, which is a good thing because I've had a lot of time with myself these last 2 years. Spent a lot of time in the living room of my apartment. But that quality of life, I mean, I never had people tell me that they were jealous of my lifestyle or kind of just my personal vibe until until I was, poor, jobless, constantly kind of looking, and like, I get it way too much. I maybe all the time too strong, but way too much. And I'm here thinking, like, well, I mean, if you want to trade places with me, I mean, you could, like, because they're coming to me with the, their full-time job. They're going to do fun things too. And really what I have, they could easily have, just right now. It's just a matter of when you're in that grind. I think it's really hard to see. Like, I would advocate, I never want people to just, be fired, be laid off, especially, because again, that's outside their control. But anyone who can kind of financially go through, a 1-2 month kind of unemployment stretch, I think is honestly powerful, because I've talked with other people who, unfortunately have had to go through it too. And there's an element of self-discovery that is just inherent in it, to where as long as you don't have to worry about that you're going to be out on the streets, or not have food, which, is a luxury, to not have to worry about. But then, so once you take care of those basic things, there's a lot of kind of self-discovery when all of a sudden your structured day-to-day life of being at the office at 8, working till 5, Monday through Friday, escape and unwind for the weekend, dread going back to work on Sunday night. You get in that routine over and over, and not having any of that for, say a full month. I mean, man, it's an enlightening experience. I'll put it that way.
But could you state that even though, over the last 2 years and you've been employed for, you said 7 months of it, even
Yeah.
those unemployed times or where you were working part-time, that things have always worked out for you, that you always paid rent, you always had a meal to eat?
Yeah, yeah, without having to like do do anything illegal to come about it. So yes, I mean, I've been fortunate that way. I've been right on that edge. I've been within kind of like having less than a month's worth of funds, but before things really get interesting. Um, and I find part time. I've driven for Lyft. I've worked here in Denver. We have one of the largest volleyball leagues in the country, and I've worked for them the last 2 summers. Um, so I find things, and now I started my own business because I got tired of not getting emails back about jobs I applied to and felt like I could execute, and just figured like, okay, I might as well make a job for myself since no one else wants to hire me. um so yeah.
Awesome. I want to wrap up the interview with what I call rapid fire questions. So I have a couple
Okay.
questions for you. And the first thought that comes to mind, shoot it.
Okay.
This is kind of cheating because I know, but what country are you going to next?
Technically Belgium, but yeah.
Okay, without
Belgium,
that one. Um,
Belgium, Poland, Hungary, and Czech Republic.
so you're
Some more.
gonna little Euro tour.
Yes, yeah. Come
Awesome.
come in the summer. I'm checking off a bucket list item of working at a hostel for 5 weeks in Prague.
See, that's awesome. And the freedom that you couldn't have stuck in that 8 to 5.
Yeah, yeah. Typically, you cannot request off 7 weeks of PTO.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no. Fill in the blank. When all else fails,
um, let's move on to the next one.
so don't get stuck in it. Don't linger. Move on.
Yeah, yeah. I think most people would say like try again, but yeah, I think trying again is sometimes part of the issue. Sometimes that makes sense, but on to the next one. If the next one is trying again, that's fine. But also look for alternatives, because otherwise you might get into that the old definition of insanity scenario of
Yes.
keep trying to do things the same thing and expect a different result. You're the crazy one.
All right. And on a final note, what is a favorite quote or motto that you live by?
um wow. Yeah. I do. If I could go off camera really quick, I do have, and I know I sent you this, but um I'm not one for horoscopes, zodiac signs, stuff like that, but I've had some really on point fortune cookies. Um, and the last one I got, and I got it on like Monday. As one grows to understand life less and less, one learns to live it more and more. And I thought that summed up my my last 2 years, pretty well. Um, Another quote that I can rattle off that's a little different is there's uh, there's no innovation in the absence of discontent, which I think is Deepak Chopra.
That is
So
deep. I like that. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Admittedly, it was him making an argument that he wouldn't want to go to heaven because heaven would be boring because everyone's happy. So, but I thought the sentiment was pretty on point. Of most improvements in life come from a pain point that someone's looking to solve. So if
Yeah.
everyone's happy, things kind of stall out.
I think on that note, something I read recently was use your pain to fuel you. So whatever you're going through, use that, like to move you forward. To For me, it was ending my engagement and writing a book. So yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, and I mean, if I could add, one more thing, quickly too. We spoke yesterday, and I said, there's life cliches that you see on Instagram, and they're kind of memes of now I'm going blank. Uh, you need to go through a rough patch to find yourself, or go outside of your comfort zone if you want personal growth. Kind of those mottos, and I just kind of thought that they were kind of throwaway lines, but these last 2 years have definitely kind of been that for me, and there's a lot of truth in those cliches, and so if there's anyone as stubborn as I am listening to this, just know that that's fine. But if you're in one of those situations, you'll the truth will be revealed. Just how on point those are, and embrace it. And embrace it.
Awesome. Great note. Mark, thank you so much for joining for this week's episode.
Yeah, thank you for having me.